Okay, our first step on our clock. This is a roughed up piece of masonite. I think it's masonite. Anyway, you need to sand this to rough it up. You don't need to sand it to smooth it out. It comes so smooth that you actually have to rough it up. So I'm going to put out burnt sienna and traditional raw sienna. I'm going to use a big fat filbert wash brush, and I'm going to slip slap. So I'm going to get into some of this dark color. Put it here and there. Don't want this to be all dark and all dead burnt raw umber, but I don't want. Oh, and the other thing you need to pay attention to is which way the straights on the back of this go. If you want to hang it so that you're going to have a tooth hanger thing right here, then you need to make sure these are straight. If you want to do a wire in between, you need to make sure they're that way. I never pay attention to this, and I'm glad that I remembered to tell you. So I'm going to mark the straight right here on this, and that will tell me which way is up. And so then I'll come down to the other side and mark it over here too. Okay, so where were we? We were slip slapping. Okay, so take it all the way to the edge. Don't worry about your edges though. And then dip into some of your burnt sienna. This is all going to be covered up. We're going to crackle. We're going to wax. We're going to do all kinds of weird things. And they'll kind of mix in between. And you don't want it to be a pattern. You want it to be random. Some can be kind of mixed and some can not be. It doesn't really have to be a strong base coat. You don't really want to care too much whether or not. You want it smooth. You don't want to introduce too much texture at this point. So not big, thick, heavy coats. It's kind of fun just to play, but just try to remember that you don't really need a rhyme or a reason. You just need random. Okay, so now, while we wait for that to dry, we'll take out our cosmetic makeup sponges. These are little triangular looking doodads, and we're just going to take our clock by the edge here, and we're just going to wipe that onto our edge just to have it nice and finished. Hi, are we done yet? I think so. Alright, so now that we have this, I've blow dried this, and then we're going to take our wax. What's really cool about this, I had to play around a little bit to figure this out, but we're going to just chisel off just a little bit of this with our palette knife. And then we're going to just wipe on irregular shaped. I tried it with my finger, they came out too round. Just irregular shapes of this this wax where we want this to be. Now I have, okay, so like, see how right here, that's where the wax is. Okay, so we're going to build a little area, and we're going to take it all the way to our edge. Build a little area of these little chips. The chips generally, what I found, is they would be heavier in some places and just a few, and they kind of gather. Okay, so then I'll walk over here and just have a couple little things, real random, okay. And I'm going to bring it up into my center area. I've got that lighter there because that's going to, I think, end up being lighter. Okay, I got these little chippies. Now what's going to happen, I'm going to keep our crackle medium off of this. Okay, let me throw out. Okay, we're going to keep our crackle medium out of this, and because I don't know how that will react. I'm just going to randomly put some of these things heavier here, little gatherings of things. We can add a couple of painted on ones a little bit later if we decide that we don't have quite enough. We can paint some in. Okay, just, it's kind of fun not knowing at all what you're doing. Huh? Now that's going to disturb me. I think we're going to have to break that up, I think, a little bit. Nothing too big. It depends on how old and cracked you want your clock to be. This is almost like a garden clock is my plan for this. Maybe I'll call it garden clock. I haven't figured out a name. I haven't seen it done yet, so I can't name it until I've seen it all finished yet. guys are on this lovely journey with me. Okay. A little random. Okay. Now the thing that we can see is we can see where it's at. So now when we put our crackle medium on, we're going to want to stay out of that area. Okay. So we're going to use weathered wood. It's decorative. Now you're going to want to do this when you can leave it alone, because if you play in this at all, you're going to be very upset, because it pulls and lifts and does all that kind of stuff. So do it and then walk away. Now the crackle medium, if you brush it straight up and down, the cracks are going to go the direction that you brush when you put your paint on. And so when I'm doing this, I'm going to just put a little bit here and there, real random. Okay, and we'll try to stay out of the areas where the other stuff is. We don't want to cover this whole thing with this crackle level. So we want some up top here. Just a kind of a real random look. And then when we apply our paint, we're going to alternate heavy paint with light paint. And what will happen then is you'll get a varying degree of crack, because the thicker your paint, the heavier the crackles. So we want this pattern to go on here. I could have done this a little while ago, but I didn't think about it. I'm going to use my compass, mark to where I want the color change to be. Just run it right along through everything. Wipe off your compass lead. And now we're going to know where we want the green color and where we want the light color. Okay, I'm going to wipe all that off. Okay, now this is where we're going to get some of our texture, because we can't help but get some of our texture. We're going to pick up our paint with a big giant wash brush. Let's get you on there. And then we're going to lay our brush down to the surface. If I was upright, it would be like this. The way we're going to apply it is this way, because we want to pat the paint on. You could almost tap it on with a makeup applicator if you really struggle with this. But laying the brush down and just tapping it on is going to give us nice heavy coverage. And then just kind of smooth it out as you pull away. Kind of, you know, just kind of play in it a little teeny bit. Here is where we have our crackle medium. We want to go real heavy, smooth it a little bit, and then real thin brushed out. These are going to be real small cracks over here. Now my crackle medium is still slightly tacky. Don't tell my crackle medium I said that. It's so tacky. Okay, so we'll do real small ones and next to our real heavy cracks. If you start digging a hole, leave the area immediately. Okay, and then in these outer areas, you can just kind of blend it fairly smooth, but you want to keep the texture about the same. You want to try to avoid this look right here where it's like transparent light color, I guess. And now we're going to antique after, and we could put a big fat leaf there. You know, so that's not a problem, but I try to avoid things like that. But we want to get this covered with our first coat. Okay. Brush is laying down, tapping the paint on. My crackle medium is wet, so ooh, you gotta be so careful. Try to stay on your line. Now one thing about DecoArt's crackle medium is it will crackle for you. If you put this medium on, and even though it dries, that paint will crackle for you a year later. If you're using Delta's weathered wood kind of a crackle medium, then Delta's is, they're all triggered by different things. Don't worry about keeping this line too smooth, because we're going to put in fresh, crispy lines, and I'll show you a trick how to do that. Now I think down over here, oh see, I can already see my cracks right there. Down over here, I think I'm going to go heavy. Okay, I think I want this to be nice and heavy. Got a little bit heavier crackle. So I'm just patting, barely working. Now thin, 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 thin. The more you stroke on it, the more thin or small the cracks will appear. Okay, and then, so Delta's crackle medium is a time-based, which is, they're both excellent for different reasons, but just so that you know that you're dealing with two different mediums. Now over here I don't have hardly anything going on, so I'm going to do a heavier crack right where I've got my crackle medium. Thin, thin, thin. And then we'll break the difference between these with some of the top crackle that we antique. And now we don't want to crack into our pretty little cracks that we have going on right there. So you want to be real careful. Real cautious. My brush is almost laying right down on the surface. Okay, so we'll get over here and let's finish this up while we have, well, that hasn't cracked yet. The cracks will start right away. Now the one-step crackle, or the top crackle that we're going to do, is kind of more of an overnight thing. I'm going to flip this around. I do have my tape marking the top right here so that I know which end is up. And we'll go up here and just finish this off. I don't have very much crackle medium, but I do have some of these chips up here on the top. Oops, you see me dig into that crackle right there? Right there. Okay, I want to go back over there and pat that down. Now is a really good time to go and smooth out anything that looks wonky to you, slightly crunchy, big chunks. I got something going on there that's not mixed up paint or something. Any bare areas that look like they're not dark enough, you're not going to be able to do this later. I've got Cool Neutral. I wet my brush. I don't want a lot of water in my brush. Cool Neutral out here on the outside edge. I'm going to do the same exact thing. When we do the antiquing on the outside with another green, that's going to bring the color up of the Cool Neutral, so it's not going to be so neutral after that. Okay, don't worry, like I said, about that edge right there. Okay, so we'll get that on there. What a mess this is. This is so much fun. Okay, remember that your paint strokes in the direction of the crack, or the crack goes in the direction that you stroke. I don't want a direction. I don't want weathered wood, which is the name of this product. I want like a good old-fashioned weathered crack. So I'm going to make sure that my cracks go all over the place, and I'll go random, kind of. So I won't go, I'll just tap it back and forth a little bit. Okay, bring that up next to that. So this is where I've gotten to. I've let it dry overnight. You've got to let it dry overnight, because now what we're going to do is rub on this thing. So what I've got is, I've noticed that, I remember if I had some of this wax down here in the corner, and I've noticed that I can just kind of peel off the wax, the paint on top of the wax, which is what we want it to do. But I don't remember exactly where, and I don't want to rough this up too much. So what I'm going to do is heat it in areas with my blow dryer, which is soften the wax. And take our paper towel and scrub off any areas that will come off. And they should come off nice and irregularly. There we go. And voila, chipped paint. How cool is that? And what you're going to do is you're going to work your way around the whole clock like that. And then once you get to the point where you think you've got your wax all off, it's going to leave a waxy residue on top of the paint and stuff, and we don't want that. So we're going to dip into a little bit of, just hang on, where's our, dip into our alcohol, and then very gently, and you got to move quickly because alcohol will remove your paint. Then what we'll do is we'll just remove the waxy coating and see how it's removed. Just a little bit of my paint right there. We'll remove the waxy coating with the alcohol. And if you find a spot later that you've missed or something, then you can go back and take care of it. So all the way. Now I'm going to take a little bit of time and just sand down some of these ridges that I've got going on here from the extra thick paint. And use a real rough sandpaper. I just don't want them sticking out really high. That's something I wanted to tell you. Is, okay, so say like we have this one hole right here and we didn't really manage to get too much else in this area, crackled or whatever. When we get the design painted on here and we see how that looks in comparison, because it's a little bit like a polka dot, if we don't like it, then what we can do is we can paint on some other holes or we can just apply this paint over this and get rid of it altogether. So if there's, try and trust me on this as far as where we're going. If you like the finished result and these steps look a little bit weird to you as you're going, then, you know, if you like the finished thing, then we're going to walk that path and you're going to be just fine in the end. Okay, now that we've got our mess cleaned up a little bit here, we're going to put our border on. We're going to use our compass, which is set at about a little over 1/4 of an inch. Now whenever you're base coating this border, I want you to skip the areas that have the chipped out paint or base coat around them. Nice neat little border there. And we're going to have an inner band as well, so we'll widen it up just a little bit. Here's where we're going to get fancy, because we have a circle, and I want this to be, even though this is a garden clock, I want this to be really, really a crisp paint job, like it was done in a factory kind of a thing. I'm going to use this stretchy tape, and I'm going to just tape it along my graphite line and pull as I stretch, and it's going to give me a perfectly wonderful, clean line. Just work our way around, stretching as you go. If you get any kind of square corners, fix them as you get going, otherwise you have to peel the whole thing off. And I'm working in these smaller segments of tape, which is going to be perfect, because then I can, in case I make a mistake, I'll have it. Now I shoot that off in that direction right there, so that I can start the next one and make it straight. So just work in small sections of tape and give yourself a taped edge. My thumbnail along. And you don't care if this is bubbly over here, that's from pulling the tape. But you do care if you have any bubbles next to the edge, because that's the side that we're going to tape from. Okay, so we're going to take our makeup applicator and we're going to tap it into Plantation Pine. And we're just going to tap that right on the border. Maybe we can wipe it on there. It's probably, well, it's a little bit transparent, so we'll tap it on there and it'll be nice and darker. Oops, you know, didn't I say I wanted us to avoid these areas with the chipped off paint? Whoopsie. Okay, so we're going to get our border wet, and then we're going to angle foliage brush and stipple into reindeer moss, and then we're just going to make a little like faux finish. I'm going to go in between both colors and just stipple along, not an even thing. It's going to be uneven. If you get it a little bit off and go the other way, go back with your green. I want it to be a mottled, kind of a marbled almost looking effect. Once you get all of your stuff done, I went totally off of my tape line right there. Then you're going to peel off. I'm going to do this quickly. Any of your base coat that wants to lift a little bit because it's still wet like mine is, just go ahead and push it back down. And we know that we can just base coat it if we don't like what it does. And I like what it did, so that's perfect. Okay, so now we have our border. We've got the inside band. When this is dry and that's dry, then we're going to do something with that. But what we're going to do right now is we're going to tint this border and crackle it. Actually, we're going to crackle it first and we'll tint it. Next step is we want to crackle this with a porcelain crackle. Now the reason we're going to do it now is we'll crackle it with the porcelain crackle, and then we're going to wipe on an antiquing or a deeper green to green this up just a little bit. And so what we have to do is get the cracks on, get the cracks dry, then we can antique it, and then we want our pattern spilling over the top of it. So when you do that, you're going to use a big oval flat brush, and you're going to just pat it on in all different directions, staying out of your cracked area. And the thicker, the better, the bigger the cracks. So if you want thick cracks, go thicker. If you want thin cracks, go thinner. The more you work it, the finer the cracks. You just lay a puddle down there, it'll be one big fat crack. So you have to decide what you want. You're best to play with this once on your own and decide how much you need to get the look you want. Okay, once again I'm going to use this great big giant oval filbert, and I'm going to get into my Hauser medium green and a touch of Plantation Pine and make a little wash. I want it to be a little darker than the Hauser medium, but not so dark as the dark. we're just going to make a wash, and we're going to put this over these cracks. We want to tint those cracks. We want to antique those cracks. Nice even wash. And some are going to be darker than others. Oopsie. Hello. Would you like to see what I'm doing on this lovely DVD? Okay. Try to stay out of these areas where we have the chipped paint, because those really shouldn't be tinted green, I don't think. We just kind of want to wash this over the area just to kind of change the color. And to warm it up just a little bit. I knew I wanted, when I did the cracks, I knew that I was going to want to antique them darker, and so that's why I went with this lighter shaly green color when I did this. That's going to make everything on the clock just a nice warmer green this way. Because we have so many weird surfaces going on right here. We've got wax, we've got crackle, we've got washes, we've got stipples, we've got all kinds of things. So I have my line traced on for my border here. I'm going to use Cool Neutral. And I'm just going to go ahead and line this. Just real gentle, short strokes, staying in the lines. Don't try to do the whole distance. Pull towards you, pull straight into your hand. Push down on the brush as much as you need. Give it the amount of base coat that you desire. So that might mean that I would want to go back over this when it dries to get it a little bit brighter and darker. Outline both sides of the border with thinned lamp black. And when you do this, you're going to go in very short strokes, and you're just going to follow the line that you made. Pull towards you, straight into your hand, until it's not comfortable to go any further. Do both sides at once. Don't go through the cracks and the chips. Hint when you're using the compass to mark your piece. I just was trying to mark my piece, this inside band with my compass, and I off the edge, you know. And that's real easy to do when you're trying to do something on the round. On flat and straight, it's not a problem. So when you get your compass all set up, put your project on one of these Lazy Susans. Get your compass lined up on the edge of everything. And then just keep your hand upright, and then just rotate it like a little cake plate. To the inside radius of this taping and stuff like that, the angle gets a little bit tighter, and so what you want to do is just work in much shorter pieces of tape, because if I work that long and I end up with a square spot, which I actually have right over here, if I end up with a flat area, then I'm going to have to peel off all of that area to get back to that. So work in smaller, shorter pieces of tape, and then when you're bending it, also just go real short little steps. Don't try to bend it all in one fell swoop. My two bands taped. This tape on the outside is going to probably peel the wash off of some areas right here, and I'm just going to rewash it. Use Camel, and we're going to tap on the border. You want to do this as soon as you get done taping, as soon as you know you have a nice straight line. A little bit of peeling over here, and I got a little bit of my color on my piece, which was just goofy of me. I got it in many places, actually. I go in and just rub that off while I've got this here. Okay, and I'm going to rewash my green color. To get next to that edge. I want to be careful of my tan edge now. You want to have enough water in your wash so it goes into the crevasses. That's what makes a good wash. And if you wanted to make that just a little bit darker, you could too at the same time. Now if your paint gets too washy, then what will happen is it won't cover up anything that you want it to cover up. So you gotta play with the consistency of your wash. The Rebecca Bear Curves stencil. I'm going to use this one that's up from the corner. I'm going to use a cheap ratty crescent stencil brush and tap into light parchment and just stencil on top of that traditional raw sienna border Stay out of your green. If you get on your green, then just go ahead and go back with your Q-tip and clean it up. Go over this twice while you've got the stencil in place. This doesn't take a whole long time, but you do have to hold it where it's at right then. You want it to be kind of dark enough. Okay, so that's what we got. And then we'll just keep moving that as we work our way around and finish it up. What we want to do is we want to put our a little band on the inside, and we're not taping it. I want this to look a little bit filigreed, so I'm just going to freehand that little band all the way around. So we actually get to paint something. Alright, the first thing that we're going to want to do, I've got my wheel underneath here, but I'm just going to go ahead and lock it. We want to build some darkness up underneath this area, okay, so that our yellowy, bright little hydrangea, I guess they're kind of hydrangea flowers, I'm not sure what they are, snowball plant, something like that, will show up. So we're going to do this in washes. We're going to use our oval glaze brush. We're going to go into traditional raw sienna and a little bit of the Hauser medium green, traditional raw umber, pardon me, and we're going to slip slap. And I've got a pattern here somewhere. Okay, we're going to slip slap in this area down here. And for right now, I'm just going to leave it up in this area, cupped by the clock. I'm going to spill out some leaves and things like that. I'm going to get a lot more water in my brush, and then I'm going to carry this out at the edges. So I've got it placed on there, and now I want to carry it real washy. Blot my brush every now and again because I don't want any harsh stop and start marks. Okay, and we want it to be a little bit one-sided, not all right down here in the middle. So I'm going to go back in, give myself those little tangerine colored spots. Real washy for the tints and glazes. Okay, that's just like a little light hitting out there. And then into green. This is all dirty brush using very wet paint. Then into the green. Use your paper towel to soften. Okay, now I'm making it very even down here. Sigh. So now I have to go back up here and grow that up that side right there, and then not grow anything else up this side over here. Now it's time to deepen just a little bit because we're dry now, and then we're going to use our, I don't want to get too dead looking with the raw umber, so raw umber plus the green. Shadow up that green just a little bit. Don't cover up all of your tangerine color. We can go back in and put some of that on. I'm going to darken this up towards this direction. And we want to keep our chips cleaned off because it works so hard to put them there. Okay, so crawl up in this direction. Go back into our tangerine dirty brush. Brighten a little bit of that. Washy paint. And so I want that to be really washy out there. So I'm going to go ahead and wash them on and then kind of blot them off. And drag them up in these serrated tooth kind of fashion. Oops. Okay, so I got that. And then just kind of blot it. And then one more here in the middle. Let's mix a little bit of our orangey color, our tangerine color, in with it. Okay, we got a darker leaf over here. Let's make something a little bit stronger happening over here. couple of strong leaves over here. And camera. Now we have to go do is use a liner brush, and we're going to make our vines and brambles and things like that. I'm going to use traditional raw sienna, raw umber. God, I keep doing that. And we'll spill these out over our edges. And we want to take the time to make them very, very jerky. Let me see if I can zoom in for you. Okay, so I want to push down, lift up, squiggle, cross things. As we get out into the transparent areas, go ahead and mix a little bit more water with what you got going there. We're going to grow the flowers over the top of these. It's kind of nice to do these freehand. This is a kind of a mess, you know, so if you can look at the whole picture and say, okay, I see where we're going with this, it might make your job a little bit easier. Sometimes pulling towards yourself when you're doing the vines is much easier to do as well. As we get out to these outside areas, you want to have them thinner and washier. The next thing that we're going to do is use a mix of the tangerine and the traditional raw umber. And we're going to make a couple of clusters where we're going to have our flowers. And we can make them different darknesses. Pardon me. Okay, we'll come over here. We don't want to get rid of all of our cool, different varying background colors, so don't make those go away. And we need to let this dry in between. A lot of times I like to go wet and wet, but in this particular case, it didn't work for me. And we'll have some of these different color things coming out every which way. Get some green stuff going up here. Like I said, don't get rid of some of that background stuff going on. Do take it all the way to your border though. If you don't take it over it, take it at least to it. Pardon me. Blot this over here because we want that to be fadey. Okay, I think we're getting some good groundwork. Go ahead and side load your flat brush with a little bit of the traditional raw sienna, okay. And then go ahead and float up these chiseled leaves up in the middle, on the edges up there, down the center. And we'll telephoto in. We'll start with this cluster right here. I'm going to pick up with a filbert brush my medium Hauser green. And I'm just going to start building little blobs. And I want to go outside of the shape that I've got based in. I think I'll leave it out of here. We'll put a little bit of the traditional gosh, I can't get the name of that stuff right. Nope. Raw umber. Ah. Then we're going to pick up traditional raw sienna. On that same side. And we'll pick up a little bit of the taffy. And my brush is dirty the whole way through. Jumped a little too fast. Mix a little bit of the taffy in with the raw sienna. And make some petally shapes. And then go up a step with just taffy. Wipe off your brush and go taffy. Don't wipe it clean, but wipe it. And we'll have a couple that are over here that are, I don't know, just separated from it, go back, knock it down a step as we walk over that direction. This is like an extra little cluster kind of a thing. We have our green sitting out there. Wipe out your brush, get into your light parchment. Oh, my paint's still wet. Time to move on to a new bunch. Actually, I think we want to spill this one out just a little bit over the edge right there. So I think we're going to just go ahead and do that. Alright, so now we'll build another cluster or so. I'm going to go over here with this big tan raw sienna blob. I think this is a good spot to, let's plop in a couple of clusters of just straight tangerine. Okay, just a little bit. Let's do the same over here. Okay, we'll mix into tangerine plus the raw umber. Oops, not enough. This is all dirty brush. Okay, we're going to leave that alone over here in the middle area. Go into the taffy, dirty brush. You'll know if you have it too bright because it'll kind of scream at you. Just little taps and pats. I'm not doing anything real concentrated with this. Wipe my brush off. Move up into this area right here. And I'm going to try and keep that just a little bit greener. I'm going to put out avocado dip and see how we do with that color. I'm going to start with my green. I'm going to leave that shadowed next to that. Right there. I'm going to leave a lot of this brown showing through. It's behind, you know, it's behind the other, this other flower right here. I'm going to go into avocado dip. Just kind of see how the clusters will form up on top of that green. Kind of liking it, but it doesn't really go very well with what we have going on, so we're going to work on that. wipe out my brush, go into taffy. It's almost time for me to stand up because I can't see. One thing about painting in this kind of a loose fashion is you can't see it when you're really up close and on top of it. So it's a really good idea to get up and away from it a little bit. Okay. So I have these leaf shapes over here, but I'm suspecting that I'm going to end up without these leaf shapes. So I'm going to just make them into clusters that spill in some kind of viney, leafy kind of a thing. Alright, and I'm going to jump over to this section right here, and we're going to go back into our tangerine, and I think tangerine in the brown. Make that be a little cluster kind of a thing, just a little one. I'm going to reach into taffy. I want these to tilt and twist different directions. Okay. Good, good, good. Now, by not covering up all of this really dark stuff, and it's giving us something like a platter to put our flowers on top of. Now, we need another green one if we're going to keep that green color there, so I think we'll go next. I'm thinking we better bring a little bit of green right down on top of here. Sneak that over the edge. So I want to be, whoops, I want to be reaching so that you can see this on the camera. Here. Okay. I want to be reaching out this direction with this. My little flowers are going to spill over. And I've got that really bright green right now on my brush. Now I'm going to wipe my brush off and pick up taffy. Okay, wipe out my brush, pick up tangerine. Give a couple of little tangerine-y spots to these things. Okay. If you're not an orange person, you are so going to hate this project. The nice thing about this, say that you like, say that you like what I'm doing with the green flowers, but you don't like the orange. Well, don't put the orange in. You know, you can change these colors and you could just make them use the same palette, just get rid of colors that you don't like. If you don't want it so green, ease towards the light, that kind of thing. Okay, so tangerine plus raw umber, back up here. Okay, remember we don't want to get rid of all that deeply dark, which I just tried to do. So like I'm reminding myself right now, okay? Wipe my brush off. I want this to get a little bit duller, so I'm going to go tangerine and raw sienna. And plus taffy mixed together. I don't want all of these to be the same intensity. Okay, so let's see if I can get you on camera again. All right. Okay, I want to get myself straight up and down. All right, so I'm thinking it's time for another green one, so we're going to go into our Hauser medium green. Don't get rid of all that deeply darkly stuff back there. When I first started doing hydrangeas, it was real easy for me to decide just to kind of blom on everything. Now it's a little bit more controlled, and I like the look of it much better now. Okay, into that avocado dip, which is making me hungry by the name of it. We don't want to cover all that green up. liking that. Wipe it out into taffy cream. And this is thicker. The light parchment, and choose some areas to brighten. I'm thinking I need to get out my white paint. There's not going to be very much white paint on here, but just a little bit dirty brushed randomly here and there, just where we really want to see some bright lights. Okay. I'm going to shade around. I'm using traditional raw umber, a flat brush. And in these ones that we left a little browner, I'm going to shade. So I'm going to go over here around those really bright petals. And then I want to round that up just a little bit. I don't want that to be surrounding those little bright petals so much. A line in there. And that's just going to give us a little wee bit more depth. I can do the same on the green. I guess we'll try the traditional burnt raw umber. Sorry, I keep doing that. I'll cut up the sides for roundness. Okay, we'll come over here. We may have to accent a few of these things again. Okay, we're going to pull out some big guns, and on our taffy yellow areas we're going to put out, we're going to use bright yellow on some of these to increase how bright they are. And taffy yellow over the top. It's almost like a glaze. Whoops! Here and there. On the green ones, we're going to get into yellow-green. Just to intensify that green that we've got going on. I'm going to stay out of the highlights. Okay, we're going to go into a little bit of our primary yellow in our orange areas. Underneath these letters. This needs to be kept just a little bit narrower. I mean, underneath the letters, underneath the flowers. Hello. Okay, make these guys pop out just a little bit better. Increase the difference in value there. Over here where this is coming out over there, let's give that a little definition. We want to wiggle with the rock and a jiggle. No. So we want to wiggle and make it follow the line of the flower, and then just maybe fuzz it out just a little bit. Squint your eyes, you'll know if you've got it right or wrong. Okay. See-through quilting ruler. I made a line straight across the hole to the 3 and the 9, and one straight up and down. Now I'm using the quilting ruler to mark where I want to put my next stencil, and I think I want it about 2.5 inches over the midline. I'll make a little light pencil line called Motifs and Medallions, and it's ST108. Okay, so that being said, we are going to line up this motif over here, which has kind of got a scrolly thing, and we're going to line it up on center point with the leaves. Is that the one I was going to use? Okay, yeah. And I'm going to have the end leaf hit my line. I'm going to use the raw sienna, get a stencil brush. I want to do this a little bit lighter. We don't want this to be base coated. It's a thinner little stencil look, so it shouldn't be a problem. If we had to, we could roll over it with a little bit of the background color to soften it. Okay, so there we go. We have a little motif up there. I'm going to dry that off. I'm going to flip it over, reverse it, and have that end on the same spot. So it's nice about having a little line there. It'll look nice and balanced that way. So I'm going to use my liner brush, and I'm going to base my letters with a mix of traditional burnt raw umber and traditional raw sienna. Okay, when you get your letters based in, use a little bit of the same color and go over the main design elements just to carry the eye around, up kind of through the center of the design. I'm going to use my wash brush. I'm going to need to sand this outer edge. Get a little bit of resistance there. Ooh, my paper towel is saturated. So I'm going to find a clean spot. With our tangerine color, just go ahead and give just a little bit of a wash to that outer area right there. Just to bring that brightness up through the piece. Okay, I think we can call this one finished. Go ahead and sign it.